One of the things that I find important to do when you have blocks, I'm really meticulous about putting everything in numerical order. From the time I set it up here, from when I cut to when I pick them up. That's going to be huge for you, because if you ever question yourself and you ever need to take a look at something and go back to it, ultimately that's going to save you in the future, knowing that you always do it that way. So I'm going to put my RO water that I had been saving from the filling the water bath, and I'm going to pour it into this ice and make a nice ice slushy here. I'm going to use one of my old blades that I've been saving for facing blocks and use it to start facing these blocks that I just embedded. So I've got the knife clamp released. I'm going to put this old block in, and I'm going to face some of these blocks here with our newly embedded samples. I like to face them always the same way, but it depends. Once in a while I get the sample, I think I have it embedded the correct way, and every once in a while it gets turned. These samples, sometimes it's hard to see. So I'm going to face these blocks. I back it off. So I want to make sure I don't chunk these, because you want to be very careful to not face through your area of interest. Now, the way I embedded them, that sample should be pretty close to the surface. So I face in. And then I like to kind of take a look at my ribbon and just see if I'm at that area of interest yet, and if I've got the full surface. So sometimes I'll face into it a little ways, and then I'll put it over on the water bath and just kind of take a look. And I see, it's hard for you to see in the camera, but I do see a full line of my sample. In the case of these epidermal equivalents, it's better to make sure you have the whole line. I don't know if the reflection, if you're able to see that, but there's a whole line of my sample, and you'll be able to see that closer with your own eyes, probably rather than the camera. But I feel like I'm faced into that one enough. I might give it a couple more turns just to give myself a nice flat, smooth surface. It's better to underface the block and be able to go back to it than cut through your area of interest. So I'm facing slightly. Now I want to check my ribbon. I don't want to go past my area of interest. If this were a skin lesion, I might not even do a rock facing. I might even, if this had been a real human sample skin lesion, I might even slowly microtome in and just get that initial surface. I might not even actually do a full facing. Now, when it wants to stick like that at the top, that may mean, and I have to take a look at that may be one sample that I misjudged and have to turn my block around if it's going to continue sticking. Now I can see with my eye that I've got the full surface. Maybe this one little corner end I don't have yet. And that's why it's important to embed evenly, because I could be cutting this part of the sample first before I get to this part. So it's critical to embed it evenly and get that flat at that angle in that boat when you're embedding. Now I can see that this block is giving me a little bit of trouble with the sticking. So I'm going to try a different part of my knife blade and see if that helps. If that doesn't help, I may actually have to turn this block around to the other side to make sure that my sample is embedded correct, embedded the way I thought it was. And it looks like just moving that block over solved my problem. Moving the blade over solved my problem. Okay, it seems like, you can even pick up if you're not sure and you're questioning whether you got your full level and your full epidermal area. You can even pick up these test ribbons and take a look under the microscope and just kind of give a quick peek and see if you actually see it and you're in the area you want. It's absolutely better to not overface. So we'll continue facing. Be very careful when facing to approach it nice and evenly and carefully. I mean, speed is okay, but you don't want to go in so thickly. You're probably going in 10 or 15 microns at a time the way I face. But you want to approach it carefully. Now, some in a different setting, when we got to get rush surgicals out and we're just plowing away, that's one thing. But these are your precious publication samples, so there's no need to rush and hurry and try to trample these going so fast. Just take your time and face into them. Make sure you've got your area of interest. Like I said, these are just like test ribbons. They've got knife lines and everything else because this is an old, almost exhausted blade that we're just using for facing. I kind of have a better eye for it, so I don't always float a little test ribbon to see. But for your purposes, you may want to do that and give it a quick check under the microscope. So, moving right along. I'll wipe off my forceps. I don't want everything sticking. And sometimes that little test ribbon also gives you an idea if you need to adjust the screws or adjust this little lever. If the block wants to grab and chunk, if it just wants to grab it, that means something is loose somewhere. Maybe this got loose somehow. Maybe somebody loosened one of these, loosened this. Maybe the blade is loose, you forgot to clamp it. So if you ever get that happening, that's the problem. Something is loose. And that's what you need to check first. Again, you don't need to do the rocking. You can still face and do the full turn. That's your prerogative. You can do it either way. I'm still facing now. Instead of rocking, I'm doing the full turn. I feel like I've gone in enough now. I'm going to try my little test ribbon and see how it does. If the sample is sticking and not giving you a ribbon, try turning the block the other way, like flipping it around, because maybe you embedded your sample with the area of interest up, and then it wants to start sticking on the top and not giving you a full ribbon. The other thing is you might try is a slight tilt back, or very slight. A little goes a long, long way, or a very slight tilt forward. And sometimes that'll make your ribbon. The very easiest thing to try is turning your block or moving to a different part of your knife blade and just moving this little clamp lever slightly. But then the next thing to try, if it's still not doing it, is doing that slight tilt back or slight tilt forward. But this is ribboning very nicely. And I can see that I've got the full face of that sample. I can see the nice full line of the sample in my ribbon. So I'll put that on the the water to soak and chill. In the meantime, I'm going to go and write up my slides. Now, a lot of places do not like you to write up all your slides at once. They feel like it's better to write for each block as you're cutting it, and that saves you from making a mistake. For our purposes, I tend to write up all the slides while the blocks are soaking and stuff like that. I'll go and write up all my slides. You can use this KP Marker Plus. It'll make it through all the reagents, and it's a very nice. Then you don't get pencil, like the carbonated pencil shavings into your sample if you use this. Or you can simply use a regular pencil, never use a Sharpie. Now I'm just gonna, I guess I'll do one block of actual cutting just to show them. Although the samples aren't soaked enough, but it won't hurt them. I'm going to label my slides. I usually like to label them, for your purposes, I'm going to label them right here, just for the camera purposes. I usually like to label them on a very clean, paraffin-free surface, so it just keeps them really nice. Yeah, and these are charge slides, absolutely. Use charge slides pretty much for everything in this lab that's going to be done. You use charge slides. The only time you do not use a charge slide is when you're doing laser cell capture. For laser cell capture, you must have uncharged, uncoated slides. So my first block, and I always like to keep things in numerical order again. That's been important for your samples to kind of see what the cells are and going through, if you're looking at an area, going through that specific area and seeing what's going on with it and knowing where you're at. If you make a mistake on a number, like say I make a mistake and I see it's actually, if I write 107, I see it's actually 106, never go like this and try to change it. It's just not worth it. This slide is maybe 50 cents to $1. Just get rid of the slide, be done with it. Never try to cover over and rewrite a number. It's just, it looks bad, it makes you question yourself later. It's not worth it. Get rid of the slide. Don't erase it, don't do anything, get rid of it. And I put a little number 1 that lets me know that those are the very first sections. And these will be the second sections, or the second slide. And I'll pick things up in that order, in sequential order. I'll just do one more batch. Again, a lot of places do not like you to pre-label your slides. They only like you to label, like that 106 that I just did. I would cut block 106, it would match with those slides, and then I would write 107 for the next 107 block. For my purposes, and today we're writing them ahead of time. That gives our blocks a chance to soak also. I like to leave them soak a good at least 10 to 12 minutes or more. It doesn't seem to hurt our samples. Now other types of tissue would not be able to withstand that type of that long of a soaking. Now see this slide I just mislabeled, and I see that, so I'm going to get rid of it. Okay. Now I'm going to get us a fresh blade. This was a facing blade that I had used earlier. I'll use it to kind of clean off my microtome a little bit here. And I'm going to get rid of it in the sharps container. And let's start with a fresh blade and begin real microtoming. I'm going to brush off my area a little and get ready for this. Now again, I had that block facing this way when I put it in. I faced it facing this way, so I'm going to put it in facing that way. And it should give me a nice ribbon. It's got a little water on the front, so I might like dab that off. I saw that this is block 106. I'm going to make sure that my batch of slides is indeed 106. That matches with the block. We have what's called in histology the 2-second rule. That is, check your block, check your slide. It takes 2 seconds. And make sure you have not mixing up a sample. And you give it a nice, smooth, slower stroke and get yourself a nice ribbon. I wanted to stick on the block a little bit, so I think I'll just grab that and get it over to the water bath. I really like to have a little more control over the ribbon than I just did. But again, we have a little bit of a airflow problem in this area here. And I need to keep track of where my first section is, so I'm going to touch it to the edge slightly because I know that that was my first one. I don't want to lose track of the sequence of these, just because they're floating around everywhere. So I'll touch it to the edge so I know that this was my first one, and I want to pick them up in sequential order. So that way they're not floating around. And I see that this last one has a little bubbly, dry area, so I'm going to actually not pick up that one. I'm going to discard it, and the rest look fine and perfect. I don't know if the camera can pick up that little white speck on there, but that's an area that actually is a dry or bubbly effect on the tissue itself. And it will actually show up even worse under the microscope, and it's not worth trying to salvage. Now, a nice even stroke is what you want to get your ribbon. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, I'm going to dip mine in the cold because I want to not have it stick to my ribbon. So I dipped it in the cold water just for a second. I know this was my first one. I want it nice and centered within the slide. I picked up 2. Now this one was kind of a lone one, but I don't want to waste it, so I'm going to get it, and then I'll add another one to it. And you really want to keep them orientated the same way on the slide. Pick them up the same way, kind of watch how they start to spin. This was my third. Now, remember I told you that one was no good at the end, so I need to get rid of that one. But I don't want to waste this one. So I'll pick it up. And we'll get another one on here.
Really not seeing how.
That's okay. It's okay. You saw that earlier when we were practicing with the practice block. And I want to touch it there and lift it. Now that one has a bubble on it, and it looks like it may be actually interfering with the actual sample itself, so I'm going to discard that one also. And pick it up. And so that leaves me with these residual ones. I'm going to get rid of them, and I'm still going to try and get, I need one more slide. So actually this block has now warmed up. I can either take it out and chill it. I can take a gauze or a paper towel and I can moisten it a little bit on there. But I absolutely want to back this and put this in the position here and back it off one half turn. The reason is because it is expanded, I don't want to go into it very thickly because it's slightly warmed up, the overall block. I still want to stick a little. So there's another thing that I can do. Since I see the top edge is sticking, I'm going to take my fingernail and rub it on this top edge and kind of scrape off that top corner of paraffin and see if that helps me for this moment. Hopefully that'll help me get past it just to get the one section I need. Nope, it doesn't want to do it. I hate to waste them. Nope. Okay, well, it's not the best ribbon at the moment, but we got the sections we needed. Okay, so we're finished with this block. And again, I keep it in numerical order. And I put it at the top. So I know it's 106 and those slides are 106. If I ever question whether I grabbed the wrong group of slides that match the block, I know that I always do it in order, and it's a good way to kind of go back and check things. And you can see the sample on there, the nice full line of the sample. It's a nice, straight, nice, full sample. You can probably see it now better than you could earlier on the actual water bath. Again, I'm going to swipe all this, make sure there's no extra debris, and move on to the next block. I'm actually going to move my knife blade over a little bit. I have slides 107. I'm going to see that my block is indeed 107, and put my thumb here and pull the lever forward. Put this in evenly. Give it a quick dab to make sure there's no extra water. Back off the retract wheel. And slowly bring it forward. Now I can see that I'm close. I see that I'm very close. Okay, so it's not giving me a ribbon all of a sudden. So my next thing is I adjusted the lever. Let's see if that makes a difference. That seemed to help a little bit, but it's still wanting to stick. So my concern is now I think I want to adjust my tilt slightly because the lever didn't work and it's a fresh part of the blade. So my guess is I'm going to try and tilt the block face back a little bit. So in order to do that, I have to loosen the bottom one that's under here. So I'm putting my finger under there and using 2 fingers to kind of loosen it slightly. And I'm going to turn these evenly here. And that's going to move the block face back slightly. And we'll see if that makes a difference. So you can see it's wanting to hit the bottom first. And now it's wanting to give me a nice ribbon. So I have 1, 2.5 slides. Again, we have that air current flow in here. It makes it really difficult to control your ribbon. And that's probably going to be the most difficult thing in this room. I know that these 2 last ones were part of this ribbon, so I'm going to kind of keep them over here and get them back over here in case I need them. These 2 little sections here. So I've got 1, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to give myself a couple extra while I'm doing this, just to be on the safe side. It's still not giving me as full of a ribbon as I was hoping. So I may adjust the tilt slightly again. Again, I'm going to reach under here and turn it just a little, and then bring this, tighten these, and see if it gives me my ribbon. And now we've got a really nice ribbon. Much better. Sometimes I said little tiny adjustments makes a huge difference. Again, I want to keep things in order, so I'm going this way and keeping them. Okay, we have our 6 slides worth now. I'm going to lock my mechanism for now. Pick up my slides. This was our first ribbon, second, and that was our third. And these floating ones, I'm probably not going to fool with because then it might be out of order. I'll show my forceps in the cold water quickly. And these other ones have been floating out nicely. Now this one has a little white something there. It looks like it was a little fold, and it doesn't look like it's actually interfering with my area of interest in the sample. So that one is actually worth keeping to me. So I'll keep that sample, because unlike the other ones that I chose to discard, the sample area was, an area of interest was affected. Now, this is also where I make a judgment call. They only requested that I give them 6 slides. But as I can see here, I've actually cut a couple extra more than I needed. I hate to waste those extra nice sections, and they may be able to use them for other things. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and give them a couple extra slides and not waste those samples. Oops. Let me get another slide box here. Again, I usually make up these slides in a nice, clean, paraffin-free area. I don't like having paraffin debris on the slides. And we'll get these in order also and pick them up. And I'll just let them have these whole last three on the slide. They can use that for their H&E or maybe a negative control. Okay. And then I put them in order on the rack to drain. Okay. Okay, so we finished microtoming. We got all the slides we need. I have slide boxes up here. Colleen has more slide boxes, and usually I stack the slides all up in there and kind of, for every block, I crisscross them within the slide box. But now, for now, I'm going to just kind of clean up my mess, and I'll just set these up here for now temporarily. The very, very first thing to do is lock the safety mechanism on the microtome. Remove the knife. This is the knife that I use for cutting my sections. It'll cut probably about 4 to 5 blocks worth of slides at 6 slides each. I'm going to save this knife in my facing block knife because I can use it for facing. It's not fully used up. I'm going to brush all the paraffin off of here. I keep paper towels in here so I don't have to lift up the microtome physically and dump the whole tray. So then I can just remove the paper towel. And you can see paraffin does kind of get on the floor. And I'll put another couple paper towels here. This to kind of save me the next time. I don't like having to physically lift up this heavy microtome if I don't have to. Put all my utensils and things away. And dump my ice water. I mean, this is kind of common sense stuff for everybody. Maybe you guys wouldn't know how I deal with this. Water bath. Sometimes I just take like a beaker just to kind of empty it slightly. Just enough so I can carry it. Now you can either flip the switch off. I don't, but you can. I just simply unplug it. And then I take it over to the sink. I actually physically lift it and then I dump it in. I don't dump it anywhere near where the knob or the switch is. I dump it on the opposite end or where the cord is. And again, I grab a paper towel and I set it down and I give it a nice quick wipe. And if there's paraffin on the top edges here, like I said, I have gauze here in this drawer. I use that to kind of scrub off any of the extraneous paraffin off the top of it. And I just put the cord right into the nice dried unit that I just dried and wiped out. I also get rid of this. I don't want slimy water or with anything growing in it, so I get rid of that for till the next time. And people like to take my Kim wipes, so I keep those in the drawer. Everything's all nice and clean. And then the very last thing I do is I start trying to get some of this paraffin quickly off the floor, because it really builds up fast. And the cleaning people cannot get this off the floor. They just don't. And then it gets really slippery, and somebody will get hurt. And it only takes a second to do that. And I also take a quick look at my chair, which is getting quite a bit of buildup. This is the Histology chair. It's even got a label on it. So you really want to use the same chair all the time for doing this paraffin work. Otherwise, you'll have every chair like this and getting on people's clothes. And again, I take a piece of gauze because it's a little rougher, and I just give it a little wipe down. And it is important because it does get on your clothes and sticks on there. So try to use the same chair at all times. And I'll still save this little box. And I put my blocks and slides together. I put these in the back of the drawer because people like to try to take them. I don't want people taking them. They're quite expensive at $2 a blade. And then I make sure this machine is off. I push the button once and make sure it's off. Push the button once, make sure that's off. Put paper towels on here. And you can see this machine, when it says on, when it's off, it actually says time on, and it's got the actual time that it will come on the next day or whatever you've established and set up for it. And this one also has the same thing. Again, this will have a pool of water on it once it defrosts, so I put a couple paper towels to absorb that. And we're done. And then I log down on my samples. I take a pencil and I write on my log that I've embedded and the date that I cut them. And I like to keep that log here. That's it. Have fun.